All right, everyone. That was, as I'm sure many of you know, that was the King, Michael Jackson, with the two songs, Man in the Mirror and Earth Song. And I thought it was fitting that the last channel that we listened to was from King MJ Lives On. So as we do, let's take a look at the lyrics and see what we uncover. So the first song, Man in the Mirror, MM. And this is all about, as the name implies, that self-reflection. And there's not a whole lot decoded within this. It's pretty straightforward. But let's read it. I'm going to make a change. For once in my life, it's going to feel real good. Going to make a difference. Going to make it right. So cast thy net to the right. That commitment, that recommitment, going through that death and then rebirth process, the eucatastrophe, turning the ship around, gonna make a change. As I turn up the collar on my favorite winter coat. So it's alluding to wintertime, which winter is the time of death. So this is the getting ready for the resurrection in the spring. So as I turn up the collar on my favorite winter coat, the wind is blowing my mind. I see the kids in the street with not enough to eat. Who am I to be blind, pretending not to see their needs? So instead of the way society conditions us to just ignore everything and you're only focused on your own issues or your own selfish issues. So that's the altruism growing as we're letting that selfish ego die, the winter, letting that go. A summer's disregard. So a broken bottle top and one man's soul, they follow each other on the wind, So a summer's disregard is in the summer indicating the time of livelihood or the Christ's reign, and then contrasting with the winter or the death. So what's the transition between, as I said, the spring, the new life, a broken bottle top. So our broken bottle top, the loose connection within the head, the heaven, and one man's soul. So it's drawing on those parallels. They follow each other on the wind, So the winds of change, the winds of breath, the life-giving essence, because they got nowhere to go in God's firmament within this contained experience. That's why I want you to know. So it doesn't matter how far you run or how much we try and pretend these things don't exist or fall into the apathy of just not caring about them because they got nowhere to go. That's why I want you to know. So I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways, not looking outside of ourselves, but truly making that commitment within. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make a change. So pretty self-explanatory. We've got to look within, stop blaming problems in the out there, bring it back within. So I've been a victim of a selfish kind of love, the service to self orientation, the egoic way. It's time that I realize with real eyes that there are some with no home, not a nickel to loan. Could it be really me pretending that they're not alone? A willow deeply scarred, somebody's broken heart, and a washed out dream. They follow the pattern of the wind, you see, because they got no place to be. That's why I'm starting with me. So all these parallels to the reality without, it's a reflection of what's within. So we can't change anything in the out there until we change what's within. So we can just bringing it back to that. So I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make a change. And then it repeats. To really emphasize this, it repeats it 3 times. You got to get it right while you got the time, because when you close your heart, you can't close your mind. Then you close your mind. So when you close your heart, the heart being the feminine nature, then you can't close your mind, as in the overly masculine reality takes over, and then you close your mind, as in we're closed off, unreceptive to the reality around, and then controlled by the whims of whomever is pulling the levers, and introduces all the problems. So it starts when we close our heart, or that access to the feminine nature, the care and compassion. That man, 4 times, fourfold nature man, with the man in the mirror every season and every way. I'm asking him to change his ways. You know that man, no messages could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make the change. And there's a lot of of course, Michael Jackson is known for the and all that good stuff, but it's another representation of the breath, this peaceful process within, or we come back to breathing. So he's personifying, or he's exemplifying that in a song, in song form, by singing like that. It might sound silly, but there's so much meaning to that. Yeah, so it repeats, and he says Shimon. I'm sure there's something to that. I don't know the depths of why that's referred to. It could just be something fun for him to say. Just lift yourself, you've got to stop it yourself. I got to make that change today. Repeats. I got to get that man. You've got to move. Got to let that feminine nature move within us, the perpetual motion to inspire us to change. It's not just a complacent, it's moving to action. Stand up, lift yourself now. Yeah, it repeats, change, make that change. So anyway, that's Man in the Mirror. And then we'll take a look at Earth Song. What about sunrise? SON, What about rain? What about all the things that you said we were to gain? So it's sort of like coming back to the simplicity of this creation and comparing to how far we've fallen away from that. What about killing fields? Is there a time? What about all the things that you said was yours and mine? So again, examining this fallen state, and we might be tempted to blame our idea of God, or feel like we've been left out, or something's happened to us. But really, we are the ones responsible for all of this. So did you ever stop to notice? So this is like, you could frame this as a conversation with God, but this is also a conversation with yourself. So did you ever stop to notice all the blood we've shed before? Did you ever stop to notice this crying earth, this weeping shore? What have we done to the world? Look what we've done. What about all the peace that you pledged your only son? So sort of taking a stab at religion and this idea that Christianity, mainstream religious Christianity, is forward of this death of the son, as in Jesus Christ being what saves us. When no, this is an internal alchemical process of you dying as the son or daughter of God. You and your egoically constructed character, that version of you dying. And it's not just a one and done thing, it's a continual process to cross the fiction, to be crucified, cross the fiction and move out of the fiction of the character and back into your righteous rule as the sovereign king and queen of your domain and all that you have influence over. So get out of the idea that a son was pledged so that we don't have to do anything. What about flowering fields? Is there a time? What about all the dreams that you said was yours and mine? Did you ever stop to notice all the children dead from war? So maybe this is a call and response, like asking, what about flowering fields? Is there a time? So we're like talking to God, and then maybe God returning. Did you ever stop to notice all the children dead from war? Did you ever stop to notice this crying earth, this weeping shore? All the signs were right in front of us. We just chose to ignore them. to remain in a state of ignorance, ignoring what is around us. So, beautiful song to like sing to that. I used to dream, I used to glance beyond the stars. Now I don't know where we are, although I know we've drifted far. We're in this state of not knowing. We've fallen down to the bottom. So I know we've drifted far. I don't know where we are. I know we've drifted far. What about yesterday? What about us? What about the seas? What about us? So after every verse, it brings back to what about us? You know, what about me and you? As in you and you, you and your divine self. Our sense of separation took over, and it's not really even real. It's simply just for the experience. To perceive us to be separate is there purposeful so we can have this experience and learn from it. But if that separation takes over, then, you know, all these problems come back. So every verse is followed with what about us, to come back to bringing back together, coming back to unify. What about the seas? Heavens are falling down. I can't even breathe. What about apathy? I need you. What about nature's worth? It's our planet's womb. So all these conversations with ourselves, conversations with God, synonymous. What about animals? Turn kingdoms to dust. What about elephants? Have we lost their trust? What about crying whales ravaging the seas? What about forest trails burnt despite our pleas? What about the Holy Land torn apart by greed? What about the common man? Can't we set him free? What about children dying? Can't you hear them cry? Where did we go wrong? Someone tell me why. What about baby boy? What about the days? What about all their joy? What about the man? What about the crying man? What about Abraham? What about death again? Did we give a damn? So just sort of going through the fallen state of man, and it's through this reflection that we don't need to stay here. You know, we don't need to dwell into despair and the problems, but we have to face the problems in order to right the ship. You know, and it's through these reflections that we come back to the man in the mirror, the first song, to make that change. So anyway, 2 songs from a master, an absolute master, inspired by the future biopic that was announced not too long ago, created by a dear friend of ours who goes by Letitia in the world, on the world stage, and to us we know him as Vincent Vendetta or Giuseppe. And so I'm very excited about this upcoming film, which I think is going to be released in May, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't even know if that's been announced yet. But it should be a great one. The trailer, if you haven't seen it, just a little teaser, just a little over a minute long. It it about broke the internet with how popular it was. Broke a whole lot of records. So I am very excited to see this and bring honor back to this man's name, because of the role that he had to play to step out to expose the wrongdoing and the pedophilia in that world. Not that he was responsible for it, but he was willing to have his name and reputation be sacrificed to bring awareness to these issues. So God bless you, Michael. Thank you for all that you've done, and we are so excited to see you again. So I was very happy to do this show today with some of his music, and of course we'll close out the show with more as we always do. So anyway, again, thank you all for being here on this Thursday, November 20th, 2025, if you can believe it. And we're here for another Quest-i-on, the quest to turn on the single eye, the quest I am on. And these shows are an opportunity for us to gather together and ask questions and bring up topics and see what's on our heart, and see where God leads us. I'm not here and would never claim to have all the answers. How boring would that be if I had all the answers? But so I'll do my best to give my take on whatever is put forward, and whatever I don't know, I'm happy to admit it. And anyone else who has input, I love that there are others who join these shows who have input to weigh in. So if you do have something you want to share on a particular topic, feel free to jump into the conversation. It's open to all topics. And so if you do have a question at any point, just feel free to raise your hand by hitting that censor button on your screen, and that opens up or signals to me that you want your mic opened, and I'll open it up for you and call on you when there's a moment. If your mic's already open, just wait for a quiet moment to jump in. And if you have trouble doing that, just toggle your mic on and off, and I'll do my best to see it and call on you. And I do love to give priority to those who are here live on the show, but in case you're not able to make it, you're always welcome to send me questions. I do have a queue of questions to go through at all times. And so if we have a lull in the show, I'll move to the written questions. So you're always welcome to send me to those any which way that you can reach me. And just a very quick announcement. So I did a post today on kind of what I'm doing, at least for this week. I just recently got to Jeff Stagg's property in Western Virginia, so still in the state of Virginia, but on the very western corner of it. And he's got this really, really beautiful piece of property that he's wanting to develop into a veteran retreat center, a veteran retreat and healing center. So to have a place to go for veterans to have a way to decompress and to spend time together and to go through various healing practices and just have a space to go to. So he's had this vision for a while, and that's what the Foxhole Foundation is really geared towards, is disaster relief and veteran aid. So I told him I would come help out for a little bit to get some of the camp established so that it can receive more people to come help in the future, just as things begin to develop. So it's been great to start on that. It's been a lot of hard work already, and I'm sure there'll be more of it, but we've made some great progress. So if anyone wants to help out with that financially, is always appreciated, because everything comes like Jeff, he's so funny. He spends so much of his own money to make this dream come true and make this happen. So any donations just go to help cover the expenses and what comes up, and give us more opportunity to help more people. So a big venture that's coming up in December is with the guy, Tom Jervis, Pappy Jervis, who some of you might remember. I went to go help build him a wheelchair ramp so that he could get up to his camper after his home had been burned in a fire and then washed away in a flood. So the flood came, and then the fire came after that, when they had electrical issues from the flood. So it's kind of strung out of his luck. And fortunately, they were able to get him a camper, the Foxhole Foundation was, and there was just an issue with him getting up into the camper. He has the ability to walk, but it's really not easy for him to get around that way. So normally he is in a wheelchair. So we spent that whole week to build the wheelchair ramp. And one of the great things about Tom Jervis is he loves to give back to his community. He's kind of been like the Santa Claus figure in his local community. So the Foxhole Foundation is giving him an opportunity to be that and to spread the gifts farther and wider. That's kind of the next project that's coming up, is Tom Pappy Jervis dressing up as Santa Claus, giving out toys to everyone in his community, as many as we can reach. And so if you want to help out with the Foxhole Foundation any which way, just go to foxholefoundation.org and you can donate, pitch in, help out. That's very appreciated. We just put that on screen. They do great work, and I'm very happy to be involved with them still. So here's their site, and that's that. yeah, and then on other efforts, so I'm still helping out with Bali and the children in Uganda, the orphanage there. I gave an update last week that they are feeling a lot of pressure from their current landlord to find another place to live. And when they're already struggling just to have their basic needs met and take care of themselves, you know, the daunting task of finding another place to live for him and the roughly 30 other children who live there, not to mention all the other children in the community that come by to receive assistance, be fed, and all those things. So understandably, that has been a challenge for him to wrap around, and I'm doing my best to help. But I am always impressed at the level of faith that Bali always throws everything in. You know, he trusts that God is going to reveal which direction they need to go and how they're going to open up. There is one option right next door. The property is for sale, and it's actually adjacent, or it's right next to the chicken coop that they had built there. And the current owner had said that they will still be able to use the chicken coop if they get this property that's right next door. So that's what they're aiming for, but of course that costs money. Now, for us, thinking of what would it cost to buy property and build a house, we think of that as quite a daunting task. For them, I asked him, you know, roughly how much would it take, and he gave me a figure that was well under $10,000 to buy the property and build the house. You know, a big enough house for them to need. And I think I want to say it was like 7,000 total that he said to me when he gave me some estimates. So very manageable. I don't have that kind of money. But I do want to keep mentioning it. So if anyone does have that, not necessarily have that kind of money, or if you do, anyone to offer, that would be super helpful. Any little bit helps. So just any way to support that, you can go to gibsongo.com/Lions of Uganda, or you can donate to me any which way that you can reach me. You can find all my contribution links on justincarpenter.org/contribute. And just make a note that you want it to go to Bali. I've asked them to start saving up anything that they're able to outside of the basic needs and foods that they've got to provide for. And if you have anybody that you know of, any church organizations, anybody else that's looking for other outreach help, please get in contact with me, and I'm happy to set up a call with Bali to give them any reassurance that it's very legitimate, that they're real. He's willing to do any video calls or give videos or whatever is needed to add to the comfort of people knowing that their money is actually going to help children. So if you know anybody that's willing to do something like that, even just for a little bit, I'd be more than happy to help communicate or share about that. So thank you for your attention to this matter, as Trump likes to say. So that's that. And yeah, I think that's about it as far as opening announcements. So thanks for bearing with me for that. So yeah, we'll just jump straight into the show today. So I'll give an opportunity to see if anybody wants to start us off with a particular topic. So if anyone has any motivation to start us off with a question or a topic or anything in particular, now would be a great time to do so. Hey, Tracy, go ahead.
Well, hello there, everybody, and hello to you as well. Well, Justin, great. Thank you for the updates. That looks like quite the awesome project that you're getting involved with there, and the building there on his land. So yeah, I hope all that goes well. And as well, the choice of Michael Jackson today. Thank you for that. That was, I wasn't expecting to get sort of I was really hit with emotion from listening to it. sort of where we are at now, sort of knowing what we know, it just hit me. Like I literally, I couldn't help but not cry, thinking about just all, listening to the lyrics, knowing how we're going to break them down, knowing what he represents. Just it's really, I can't even speak on it properly to give it justice. How truly amazing he has been, everything he's been through, what he stands for. So it's very emotional. I've always loved that specific song, "Man in the Mirror." It has stood out as one of my favorites. And back, I was there when it came out, so I could feel the lyrics then were so powerful. There was something about them, just like extremely emotional. So like all of his music is very intense, but this one was for myself. So I've loved it so much. So thank you for playing that. And very excited to hear or see more. I have seen the trailer on YouTube there for the Michael Jackson movie. That's going to be amazing. So really excited about that. So thank you for sharing that information too. So I think as more of the stuff comes out and people are starting to see all this, it's fascinating to be witnessing from our perspective, from my perspective, how this is being exposed and what people will start to learn. So all of it is extremely emotional. So yeah, an excellent message in it too. Excuse me, I might sneeze. Pardon me. I'll try to get off soon. The lyrics are perfect, absolutely perfect, and something for all of us in there. And working on ourselves internally is the way forward if we're going to be making any change at all. So thank you for that, and love you all very much. Hope everyone is well. And coming into end of November here, we are just around the corner here for some very incredible historical dates coming up this week. So anyways, love you guys. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Thanks for that. And yeah, Michael is really quite special. I think it's such a short trailer. I think I'm just going to play it so that we can all watch it together in case you haven't seen it or just want to see it again. I want to see it again. So we're going to play the trailer and you can see, get excited about it too.
I know you've been waiting a long time for this. The tracks are made. The songs are ready. Let's take it from the top. This is your story. Honor your past. So you wanna be starting something. And embrace the future. That's what people want.
Q, can you lower the lights for me, please?
Okay, but remember, in here, keep those feet still, my man.
Yeah, awesome. So, yeah, and we've got so Qbot 99, which is Letitia's or Giuseppe's AI assistant, gave some little tidbits about the movie. So Michael is the most anticipated movie of 2026. It's going to be released on Friday, April 24th of next year. And now the trailer that says in cinema soon is the master trailer. What Lionsgates have and etc. is a Lionsgate edit for the opening date. The actual official trailer is the one above. Okay, so that is the official trailer, not the teaser. Michael was casted, produced, directed, edited, and mixed by Vinny Letizia. This movie introduces someone who has never acted before. Jafar Jackson is Michael Jackson's nephew. Jermaine Jackson is Jafar Jackson's father. Just a little bit of controversy with the delay. This movie was supposed to open on October 17th, 2025. Interesting. Yeah, so timing is everything. So I'm excited to see that unfold. So anyway, I will pass it back and see if anyone else wants to jump in on any topic, any direction, and feel free. So I'll give a pause.
Hi, this is Lila. I just wanted to say how grateful I am for Michael Jackson. I feel so lucky to have been in a world with him. And he was a really, really big part of my childhood. I think it was just because we were like right at the right age. But then I hear that from everybody, and people are at different ages. So I don't know. But I'm just, yeah, I just feel so lucky to be part of an earth that has Michael Jackson as also part of it. Just wanted to express that.
Yeah, thanks for that. It is something, you know, and it does show how he is just a timeless master because it doesn't matter what generation. It feels like everyone has been affected in some way or another. All right, maybe the younger generation doesn't know as much, but I'm sure they do. and the number of views for this trailer doesn't lie. So yeah, he touched everyone. Really, just such an impactful man. So thanks for that. And
Did
yeah,
you see that cute meme going around? I don't know if other people saw it, of him and Diana, and she's like wearing this like asymmetrical 80s shirt, kind of like total Michael Jackson style. It's so sweet. Such a beautiful picture of them.
oh no, I haven't seen that. That's awesome. Yeah, Qbot said Vinny did not turn in anything with Michael to Lionsgate until Tuesday, October 28th. It was due in July, so he was busy with other things. I know. Yeah, anybody else got anything? Any questions, topics, things you want to take us into? Like I said, I do have some offline questions I can go over, but I love to give priority to those who are here live on the call.
Hey, Justin. Okay, I wanted to bring up again sort of something that you and I were sort of discussing privately, if that's okay. It was something that I brought to the table, so I'm hoping if you are okay with. It was regarding the four agreements, and I was not understanding the. Is it okay to go forward with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say anything that I'm totally good with anything we've talked about. So go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So I was expressing like a confusion of the do not take things personally. So I do get the gist of it. I do. Where it's it's about someone else, and so my confusion was, even though it says more about the other person than you, but if there's something happening that's an action taken against you, is that not personal? Like maybe I'm just like trying to fuss, and split hairs with words here, so making it more confusing than it is, than it has to be. So if you could just set me straight, just kind of what I'm wanting, if I'm just being silly about this. So because I felt something was personal, that felt personal. And I was trying to sort of question you. I sort of didn't really get to wrap up this in sort of ways of clarity for myself. So that's why I'm kind of bringing it up again. So if it feels personal, like stating that was personal to me because it was something that was done specifically, towards me, against me, whatever. So it felt like not like a lie, not lying to myself per se, but just the way that I'm having to sort of fit into that fourth agreement into what my experience was what I was confused about. So if you could speak on it a little bit more, sort of what it really means if something does happen to you and it feels extremely personal, and it appears because it was something against you, that's not supposed to be taken personally. So yeah, can you explain some of that for myself? I think because we don't really have to talk about the whys and whatnots per se, going to a deep conversation, but you kind of know what the topic was that we were discussing. So yeah, that would be helpful if you could speak on that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks for the question. I want to first say that because part of what our conversation was feeling that was a command, like an order, or like, a must of not taking anything personally. None of the just want to clarify, and I know we talked about this, but just want to clarify for anyone else who might be thinking that none of the four agreements are commands. They're not like you have to do this in order to survive or anything like that. They are simply suggestions of ways to that if I can take on this as an agreement and really integrate them, but in order to do that, I have to really understand them. So first take the time to really get what they are, and that's true for anything. I shouldn't agree to anything unless I truly understand what it is that I'm agreeing to. So I just want to clarify that. It's not a command. It's not you have to do this or you're going to die or anything like that. It's simply just a suggestion of an agreement to take on to soften the impact of things that we generally spiral out into in life. And one of those, the centering around don't take anything personally. So to expand on that, because like what you're saying, if somebody does something and they do it to you, and it's not like they're just throwing stuff out there, they're throwing something directly at you. So how are you not supposed to take that personally, or supposed to view that as not personally, when it's very clear through their actions and how they've presented something that they were, for lack of a better term, they were targeting you? And how am I not supposed to take that personally? So I think that's the gist of your question. And I just want to clarify that it's not that the actions were not aimed at you or what they thought is you, but the agreement is to reflect on this fundamental aspect of this experience, that it's an inward, outward projected reality. So everything that I'm going through internally is what I'm projecting outward. Not the other way around, where everything that's happening out there is affecting what is my internal reality. That's the inverted way that we've been taught, and that's what breeds a powerless state, that it's all, I can't do anything about any of it, and I just have to deal with the consequences of what's going on around me, and that's that. Whereas the empowered state, that's true, which is what all ascended masters, Christic warriors teach and have taught, that we are an inside-out reality. We project from the inward to the outward. So, given such, if somebody has an issue, if they've gone through some trauma where they've learn to respond to something in some way, and they get triggered by you. I'm trying to think of like a good example to put with something like that. Yeah, it is challenging to put into words and to expand on further, but what they're going through is not necessarily because you did that, because whatever you did that triggered them, that caused them to react in that way or to be so resentful or target you in those ways, it really doesn't have anything to do with you. They're targeting you specifically, yes, but that has to do with their unhealed wounds, their triggers, their past trauma, the reasons why they're still looping in this sort of way. And you just happen to be the thing that's there in that moment to instead of them, like the first song suggested, taking a look at the man in the mirror, reflecting on themselves and what led them to this thought pattern or why they might feel motivated to inflict harm upon you. They're not doing that introspection. So they're still going off that unhealthy looping pattern of projection onto the external and acting as if the external is going to fix their problems. So instead of them taking accountability and looking at where is it that what's causing Tracy to trigger me? Why am I being so upset with her? Why is what she says or what she does bothering me so much? Instead of going through that process, looking at the man in the mirror, which is the healthy way and the only way to actually heal and transmute that. Instead, they're going for the false quick fix, or seemingly quick fix, but it doesn't fix anything. The way that society teaches us is that I've got to deal with my problems in the external. And so that's all I'm saying to, and that's what that agreement is referencing, is that because they're not going that route, then whatever they project onto you is not really because of you. It's because of their past traumas, the stuff that they've gone through, their unhealed wounds and all of that. Not to say that they're not specifically targeting you, but it really could be anyone. It could be anybody with your same traits, your same pattern that shows up in their lives, and it will be. Until they actually heal that layer, they're going to keep going through that same looping pattern. So it doesn't matter if it's you or somebody else that's triggering that issue within them, they're still going to go through it. So once I see that whole overarching theme of how it happens and how it shows up, then I can move to, in those moments where somebody is throwing their shit at me, I cannot take it as personally, because I know it doesn't really have to do with me. Yes, I'm triggering it in that moment. And so I'm not saying to not take it personally doesn't mean that we're not discerning. We're very discerning, and we can move away from situations or people or stand up to bullies or anything that happens where we're subjected to those kind of issues. Do whatever we need to rectify the situation. But just how I hold on to it. I don't need to like sit there and think, oh, they did this to me as if I'm the source of their problems. I'm not the source of their problems. I just happen to be the thing that's bringing their problems to the forefront, and they're not going through the proper steps of looking at the man in the mirror. They're projecting those kind of things out there, which again is not going to heal the issue. But that's the unhealthy pattern that we've gotten looped into. We've locked into. So if an aware, realizing individual realizes this pattern and can say, okay, I see that this being is triggered by something within me. I can sit here and think that I have all these problems and need to fix everything within myself. Well, I mean, we do need to reflect within ourselves, but I'm not responsible for somebody else's triggers or trauma. I'm not responsible for their unhealed wounds. I can't do anything about that. I can sometimes help guide them to the place of looking at themselves to address that, but ultimately we can't. So to not take it personally just kind of takes the edge off those actions to where I'm not sorry, having some connection issues. Yeah, so it doesn't mean that I don't act and move as I need to, whether it's moving away from an individual or confronting them on some behavior, whatever the case may be, whatever I need to do. But I don't have to keep on it as if it's like it's a personal attack, because while it is framed as a personal attack from their point of view, it's merely just a manifestation of their internal reality that they're acting upon, and acting upon it in a looping kind of way, of instead of reflecting and moving through that, looking at the man in the mirror and addressing whatever issues those were, they're projecting them out there. So I hope that makes sense. I'm happy to go into anything further if you have specific questions about what I just said, or I'll try and think of some more examples if that would be helpful, but I'll pass it back to you and see what you have to say there.
That was great. That makes sense. That really does. That makes perfect sense. It really, I know we've discussed sort of in detail certain examples before you've spoke on this. There just felt like this sort of thing that I couldn't quite unlock, and it is, I know maybe others, this might seems like a simple or a basic thing that we've comprehended for a while, but I'm finding myself sort of, I don't know, I'm not sure, sort of my state of my now, if you will, and trying to engage with people, wanting to communicate better. So I'm having sort of this, not like I'm relearning all of these things. Like I do know these things, but there's like certain details in it that specifically for myself that like this have come up, and I just couldn't quite grasp it, even though it's really basic and simple. But yeah, so you've explained it very well, and I completely get what you're saying. So yeah, very helpful. That's very helpful. So yeah, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's not to, it's not to put anybody down, but when we are dealing with people in immature states of being, it's wise of us to be discerning and to not, we don't have to play at the sort of childish or immature levels. If somebody, just like if a child was, I mean, that's a great example. Say a child had a horrible day, or was being picked on, or maybe had, maybe had another kid at school, like throwing a toy at them, throwing toys at them, and sort of traumatizing them through that action. The kid's all wound up and doesn't know how to process this, maybe can't communicate on it well, maybe doesn't have the way or avenue to communicate on those things. And then say that child then having toys thrown at him at school, maybe he throws a toy at you. I'm not going to take that instance personally, even though, yes, the child threw the toy at me, in that moment was trying to hit me with that toy. I don't need to take that action personally, because if I have the awareness, and maybe I do, maybe I don't, I can see what led to that child making that action, making that decision. And I don't have to stoop to that level of taking it personally and throwing a toy back at the child or whatever, it's like, so just expanding on that process when we're dealing with someone who's throwing whatever sort of shit at me, language, physically, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. I can see the I might not know all the details of what got them to that point, but the fundamental equation always remains the same. Whatever somebody throws at me doesn't really have anything to do with me. It's their internal reality. It's their own shit that they haven't dealt with, and I just happen to be the thing that came along that triggered it, and then they start throwing stuff at me. So again, it doesn't mean you don't stop the toy from hitting you in the head. You maybe take the toy away from the child, if or using that same allegory, like stop the situation from developing So it can causing more harm, and it's important that we confront these things. But through those actions, I don't need to take it personally because it doesn't have to do with me. Yeah. Yeah, Darth just sent some quotes to me. He said, weak people revenge, strong people forgive, intelligent people ignore. Yeah, that's true to some extent. And then another one, the sage battles his own ego, the fool battles everyone else. Right. We don't need to battle other people's egos. We can confront and stop egoic harm from being caused, but everyone's ego is for themselves to deal with. And if somebody's ego throws shit at me, then yeah, it's up for me to realize that. So anyway, great question. Thanks for bringing that topic up. And yeah, I will pass it over and see if you or anyone else wants to jump in and take us any other direction. All right. Well, I will go to some.
Could I say something about that? Sorry, this is
Yeah,
loud.
please. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, I just kind of wanted to do a little kind of a tailspin off of that, because what it was making, or what I thought of with that was, I was thinking of children being bullied, or even adults being bullied, or, you know, with all of these sexual aggressions and so on, rape and these kinds of things, even to the extreme of sex trafficking and things like that. Yeah, the way that having worked a lot with people who have been who have experienced sexual abuse, there almost always is the sense of like self-blame that is in there. And it's so interesting because it obviously has so much to do with like whatever dysfunctional energies are going on with the person who's perpetrating the crime, right? But then there is that interesting part of, so it's like, of course, to that being, you're going to say like, don't take this personally, don't make this like you know, don't make this about you. But then in like, I don't know if you've ever read any of these kinds of things, but in like with narcissism, they do say that, you know, or even I think I saw something recently that talked about sexual attack, and I think it was something crazy like 90% or something of the men who had, they interviewed these like men in jail who had perpetrated sexual aggressions against women or against whoever, and that a high percentage said that they they would always choose the being that appeared weak, or appeared that they would not choose the quote unquote crazy one, and or you know, the one that would be aggressive back. And then in the narcissism circles, there has been a lot of work more recently around, yes, being able to name and see narcissism, but also that there often is a certain behavioral index of a person that does tend to loop around within narcissistic relationships. And so yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting, because it's like I can so clearly see, of course it has nothing to do with, you know, the person, but then also, and that it's not personal, but then also that there are interesting coping mechanisms to move, or I guess be strategic around how to be in a space where you're not seen as the person that person would want to target, if that makes sense. And yeah, having, when you were talking about the child like throwing toys, I've shared at one point, I have a very specific memory of a young friend that was a friend that I loved. She was a little bit older than me, that my mom babysat with us. And one day, just out of the blue, she picked up a big freaking rock and threw it right at my eye. And I remember it was like, I was probably like 4, something like that. It was like the first time that I was like, someone did something and just kind of looked at me and scoffed, and I couldn't wrap my mind around like, why would anyone want to hurt me like that? And I still don't know the answer, because I've never heard what the story was. um and it's an interesting situation around like, yeah, how not to take that personally, and also how to shore yourself up, I guess, energetically, so that that I don't even want to call it softness, because it's such a beautiful quality to be vulnerable and innocent. But then also you see that the vulnerable and the innocent are often quite taken advantage of by these souls that are like working shit out and participating in karmic activities that they're then going to get the opportunity to loop back around and experience themselves and deal with and repent for, etc. Anyways, it was just something that came to my mind as you two were speaking about that. I don't know, I just wanted to throw that into the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great great add-on. And what you said at the end with the innocence, the softness, or not wanting to lose that, which is very, I mean, that's the purest form of consciousness, and that's the most valuable layer of consciousness, both on both ends of the polarity. One is aiming to harvest it in the form of whether it's adrenochrome or whatever form of sort of parasitic taking of that innocence, that childlike wonder. And then the other end is protecting it like a precious jewel, because that's the seed where divine consciousness flows through in the most unimpaired form, through the eyes of a child. And so you're very right. We don't want to lose that innocence. However, there is a layer to this experience, that innocence can become naive or unaware of the fact that we are playing this game that does have the potential for evil, and that potential will always exist. The ego and its infinite manifestations, infinite faces that it can wear, is there as a consistent test of our vigilance, so that this most precious gift of innocence is protected. And we might ask, like, why would there need to be such a seemingly almost cruel game that we play, where we have to be constantly worrying about protecting this innocence? But that's the challenge that we signed up for. Like, it's not fun to play games that are too easy. And in order to have the fullest expression of this, we needed the potential for all of it. And God is the ultimate compilation of all of it, including the potential for evil. So where did we where did we fall into the naivety where that preservation of innocence wasn't important enough to protect it against this potential for evil, or we forgot that this potential for evil existed. So that's where I see the I don't even remember how I got onto that topic from not taking anything personally, but it is, I guess, just part of that larger conversation of in order to protect the child, there needs to be both the balance of the care, the cultivation that the Sacred Mother provides, and then the protective barrier, the outer ring that the Father provides. And through both of those working in tandem, you have the greatest potential for that divine child to develop and grow, for all creative ideas as divine children of ours, the Immaculate Conception, which we all can partake in by having divine union with our God the Father and God the Mother. both are true parents. When we have the union between the two, and through us flows the child, our creative ideas, that only exists if we have both. And society teaches only having one or the other. So if you just have the care and compassion without the vigilance to protect it, the readiness, that would be sort of naivety. It's like yes, to allow the child to express, and but there needs to be that protective aspect, because there is whenever there isn't that protection, the sort of vacuum is what allows that predatory vampiric energy to permeate and enter the space. So that's where he steps in to provide that protection. And when he is there and she is not, then that protection is stifling and restricting and overly protective, and not enough room to move. It's far too stagnant and rigid. So you have to have the balance between the rigidity and the openness. She's far too open. She's open for threats and danger. He's far too closed and too restrictive. No movement allowed. So both of them in balance is what gives the container, where she's providing the movement, the flow, the ability to move and create in a safe space. He's providing that safe container for all of that to be in. That's just kind of what came up when you were speaking. And then just tying it back to not taking anything personally, that's when someone is not doing that process, I guess, as an aware individual, I don't need to know the reasons why they are acting in an imbalanced way. I just know that it doesn't have to do with me, other than it does have to do with me in that it's giving me some kind of signal. So is this individual who threw this rock at me, is this giving my perhaps overly naive self of maybe not having that masculine protective side of me to learn, okay, my warrior needs to be ready. I need to be vigilant. It's not necessarily safe to be completely like that. And I'm not saying we won't get there, but in that moment, to prepare you for what's to come, that's the signal, that's the teaching point. And of course it could happen the other way around, but then it takes away from taking it personally of like, why did that person do it at me specifically? But what was the overall signal that I'm supposed to receive from that instance happening, so that I can better refine my sense of self and my warrior and whomever I need to protect, both myself and others around me in moments to come, or what sort of, and then there's like the past life karma and all of those layers to it. So it's impossible to know all of the details as to why something happens, but just knowing that can take the edge off. So yeah, I think that. Oh, go ahead, Darth.
Hey, I just want to say I agree with everything that you just said about having the balance between the masculine and feminine forces and the need to forgive and the need to protect. That was beautifully said. Some of the ancients, especially like in the Hindu and Buddhist writings, they taught that the ratio of golems to divine people is 50,000 to 1. And they taught that you would have one divine being walking on earth, and he would encounter 50,000 people that were really just golems without the divine spark, and they were simply there to tempt them into the Maya, the delusion, the forgetfulness that they're a divine being in a divine place. And so they taught to avoid attachment, even to revenge and taking things personally, because that would just draw you into the Maya, into the forgetfulness that we're a divine person in a divine place, and that all those background characters are there just to draw you into the illusion of the suffering and pain of this world. And the Pareto principle that says that consciousness is, 90% of consciousness is locked up in 10% of the population. That says a very similar idea, that the vast majority of people that we meet are away from keyboard. They're just on cruise control. And so how could they really, they're just looping in their internal programmings. How could they do anything personal? They're not conscious enough to do so. So not taking things personal is a great piece of advice, because 9 out of 10 people that we meet, they're hardly, I mean, if you're playing a video game and a character in the video game says something mean to you, I mean, how upset are you really going to get? It's just programming. But occasionally in life, we will meet someone that is evil, they're motivated, and they're competent, and they're aware. And then, in times like that, are you going to take it personally? Maybe, because we don't worship compliance. We don't worship compassion. We don't worship yielding. We don't worship violence or nonviolence or revenge. What we worship is that which is good, which can't be defined. And that goodness, it's always with us, it's always within us, and it's always ours, and it's always speaking to us if we're simply quiet enough. So, in any given moment, if someone does something that's unpleasant toward us or perhaps a bit offensive, then we have to make that decision. Am I going to take this personally, or am I going to forgive, or am I just going to forget it? Because any attention you give to it is just going to make it stronger. This person, do they have genuine malice? Are they really my enemy, or are they just away from keyboard? And the goodness that is, that throne of divine goodness that's within all of us, it will know the truth of the matter and the best way to deal with the situation. And if we just find, a quiet moment to search inside and listen, we'll get that guidance on whether or not to take that personally. But the vast majority of people that we meet, they're stuck in their own delusions and in their own looping, and good Lord, if we took everything personally of all the stupid people that surround us, we'd be one of them.
Yeah, great stuff. It's I mean, I would say even in those scenarios where, so you're a budding Christic being following the path, the way, naturally we're going to be opposed to, anyone looped into an anti-Christic society, but certainly against those beings who are realized to some degree competent in consciously following the anti-Christic path. But even then, the only way for the anti-Christic path to have any relevance is through a state of inversion and believing that this separation is foundational, which of course it's not. So for someone to get to that space, to get to the point to where I am certainly going to be opposed to them, it's still not me. I mean, and I guess you could look at it, don't take anything personally. I mean, it's all personal because it's all you. Everyone is you, and you are you, and everyone opposed to you is you. And so of course it's personal, but just for the simplicity of not dwelling on it to impair whatever the necessary action is. Don't let whatever the necessary next step be impaired by taking it personally. At least I prefer that way, because even if it's somebody that, yes, they're evil and they're coming at me with everything they got and they know exactly what they're doing, I'm still just going to respond in whatever action I need to, without taking it personally, because it's so much larger and smaller at the same time. But I get what you're saying about, being beyond definition and having a tenet that fits every single possible scenario, I guess is not, wise, because it is fluid. But just generally, even in those scenarios, I still wouldn't expend a lot of energy towards taking something personally. It would just be like, okay, well, is this fucker trying to kill me because they're an antichrist? Then all right, well then I'll kill him. I'll kill him before they get to me, or whatever. If they're trying to hurt somebody or to stop that action, but without taking it personally, because to me it just seems maybe this is overly simplifying, but it just seems like an unnecessary energy expenditure to point whereas I don't need that route in order to get to the appropriate response to whatever that action is. So I would just add on that, but I appreciate that perspective, and thanks for sharing that. So yeah, I'll just pass it over and see if anybody else wants to jump in, either on this topic, or feel free to take us any which direction. All right, well, I'll go over a written question. And since I did take a little bit of a break from these shows, I might miss some questions. So I've got my list and trying to stay organized here. So I'm just going to jump to this one. And it's kind of related to what we're talking about. So this is from Cheryl, and she asked, so we always have a shadow self. So how does one dimension move into another realm that doesn't have evil? Or does the evil become progressively less each level? So we'll fall from purity, so each layer must have gotten progressively worse. Am I thinking correctly? Yeah, so basically asking, does every realm have evil, or do we eventually move away from evil entirely? And a lot of this, I've loved my conversations with Darth around this topic, and so some of them will be from this. And so I'll just read my response to her, and then I'll get into it a bit more. So I said, the potential for evil will always exist, but reality is not required to have it. So the potential always exists, but it doesn't actually have to manifest. It doesn't have to be here. So I said, unintegrated, unmonitored shadow, or the unconscious. That's all the shadow is the unconscious. Where is light not pointing? Where am I unconscious? That's the shadow. is where, so that's this, the unintegrated, unmonitored shadow or unconscious is where this potential for evil exists, which is always expanding. So it requires constant vigilance and humility to continuously keep reintegrating our shadow. So what we're aware of what we know, and we know what we don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. And that in the pie chart is the biggest layer of it. And so it's like we learn more, and then we realize we don't know more. And that's all part of the shadow or the unconscious. And it's through that unrealized nature, unintegrated self. This is where this potential for evil does exist, but it doesn't have to manifest. So we do this work by continuing to welcome and celebrate the unmanifest, or the shadow side, the unconscious, not pushing it away or pretending it's not there. So wherever we get uncomfortable, whatever we don't want to look at, whatever layers within ourselves that, we find that resistance, the more that we can get excited about that, the less likelihood that evil can move through that darkness, or where I'm refusing to look, and come into the space. And of course, it doesn't start as evil. It starts as just the potential for harm, the potential for an uncaring act, an unkind act to be performed. So, and I said, exercising this layer of self through healthy games and competitions, storytelling or acting, and comedy as some prominent areas that the shadow is expressed without letting it take over and then manifesting evil. So just to go over those, and I'm sure there are more, but those are seemingly the biggest areas where we do sort of play with the unconscious, or the less talked about, the less conscious. And so just to repeat those again: healthy games and competition, storytelling and acting, and comedy. So these three areas are, I mean, all comedy is just it's a funny way of expressing what is, talking about things that don't get talked about much. And it's like this process that we go through where we laugh about these things that don't get discussed much because somebody's brave enough to bring light to them. And when somebody does this, like, we all feel this levity within this of like, oh, this normally not talked about subject is being discussed, or something that's being presented in a way that I've never heard it before. It's now, there's light being brought to the surface. And that's where I think laughter comes from, is we all feel this levity within us. We all feel this lightning within ourselves. And it's a very joyful sensation to have the shadow truly being like brought to the light in that very moment. That's what comedy does. But then the other layers of having healthy games where we are able to, exercise this sort of competitive nature that our ego provides, but in a format that's simulated, where nobody gets hurt. It's not a war. It's not anything drastic like that. So we can have games to do that. And then storytelling, where we can act like the villain and have these amazing stories that we tell, where we go through all layers of darkness and contrast, and learn what not to do, but also exercise this layer of self and integrate with it further. So this is all ways to bring that unconscious self to the forefront. Healthy activities to do that. So I continued and I said, and there will be a very small percentage of the population that this potential for evil dominates the persona. Perhaps 1% where it is more common, and maybe 0.1% where it's overwhelming. And these people we have to keep a close eye on. But again, not to shove aside, but to love and appreciate even as they test our Christic system and even fight against it. They're there to make sure we're not becoming lazy or complacent. So at first, we might execute the ones who do the worst, which is a short-term solution. But long-term, it's better to monitor and work with. Maybe we'll even set up a false matrix for them to express in without harming anyone. But if we just keep killing them, they will just reincarnate elsewhere, so that's not effective. It will be an interesting and constant conversation. So that part of it is just to expand on that. So the potential for evil will exist. And just like Darth was talking about the Pareto principle, there's always going to be a small portion of the population that evil is just more likely to manifest into. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to get to that point. So if we want to use terms, so let's say that, 1% of the population, ideally, hopefully it'll get down to just this little amount, but maybe 1% of the population will be narcissist, clinical narcissist, where if you study that topic and if you look into it, some people, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's curable. Some people say like this is incurable, somebody who's like locked into this mode, no matter what, they might learn and find ways to present themselves as more pleasant, but it's just like an innate thing within them. Maybe they won't ever grow out of that. So let's say 1% clinical narcissist, and let's say 0.1% of the population are sociopaths. So those who have a really, just are even more disconnected, more willing to view people as objects and things to use, and then say 0.01% of the population, maybe those are always going to be the psychopaths, really disconnected from everyone, and to the point to where they're willing to hurt people and not even give a shit about it, all for their own enjoyment. And I'm not saying that's a solid distribution, like it's necessarily going to be exactly that percentage, but my point is that percentage will always exist. It's baked into the code. There's a thread within how this creation was built that requires this layer of consciousness to exist, at least in the form of the conscious experience that we are playing in currently exists. So my point was saying that it's best if we don't just keep removing them, but instead keep an eye on them, because if we did just keep killing them, then they would just pop up somewhere else. And the same thing existed on the other end, by the way. They knew that in their sort of hellish reality that they were constructing, if they just kept killing all the Christic entities that popped up, we just keep reincarnating, because that is also baked into the code. That's also foundational. So they can't wipe out, they can't kill every last Christic being who's more inclined to having that Christic element easily flow through them. They couldn't just kill them all because it always pops up. So it became a system of monitoring. So as we're moving away from the anti-Christic system into a Christic system, then it will be a imperative that we monitor and keep track of where are these anti-Christic elements, who are the most anti-Christic in all the land. And I'm sure that will be an interesting conversation that continuously happens about what we do with them, how we move through in care and compassion to try and learn and maybe help them integrate and accept them to some degree. But of course, we can't let that care and compassion blind us into allowing them or giving them the capability of causing widespread harm, because there are many tactics of deception that layer of consciousness likes to use, and it will prey upon care and compassion and use it against you. So anyway, it's a fascinating perspective, and it's a really, like, I would say that this topic is not one that I would dive into with just anybody. This is a pretty high level philosophical conversation that someone's gonna need to be. This is advanced stuff, so I'm not saying to have this conversation with just anybody, but it is fascinating to go over, and it does fit into what we were talking about, or what, especially what Darth just mentioned with the Pareto principle and this spread that always exists, percentage that will always exist. So anyway, I don't know, Darth, if you're available, if you want to talk any more about that. Oh, it looks like you might have. Oh yeah, you're there. Did you want to mention anything more?
Sure. Okay, so briefly on the origins of evil. So let's go back to the source of all. Okay, so down here on the bottom of reality, let's say we're sitting at a table, and on the table is a cup of a cup of water, right? Now that cup of water is mostly actuality. Okay, it's actually there, right? And it has a limited potential. Like that cup of water is not going to spontaneously turn into a butterfly and fly away. We never expect this, right? The things around us, we expect them to stay what they are. We don't expect them to spontaneously transform. But as you climb up higher and higher into reality, things have less actuality and more potential. So even just the next step up, which is you have matter and then you have emotions. So the next level up, emotions. Your emotions can suddenly change, right? So at the one moment, I might not be taking something personal, and then in an instant, all of a sudden I'm on that same emotion. Now it's personal, right? I was serene and now I'm agitated, right? And then the next level up is even more potential and less actuality, the intellectual or thoughts, right? So you can, if you imagine a beautiful mountain scenery, and then you say, okay, I'm going to imagine a beachfront, and you can instantly change the scenery in your head from mountain to beachfront, right? No effort, instantaneous. And then the spirit realm is even less actuality and more potential. Okay. So when you go all the way up to the source has absolute potential and almost no actuality. It's infinite potential. And when we start looking at that source, it's the source of both good and evil. And how can that be? So if we all just, kind of close our physical senses, and we're just going to open up our spiritual senses, our spirit eye, and we're going to go all the way to the origin of reality. Well, what would we find? We wouldn't find anything at all. There would just be a void, because there's no time and there's no space and there's nothing created yet. There's just pure potential of void. And as we approach this void, we're going to notice that it's speaking. Okay. And it appears to see us. So you have a mouth and an eye, and maybe the eye is in the mouth, right? Because it's speaking and it seems to be aware of us. And the words exert force. So the words are like a hand reaching out of the mouth and the eye that is watching us. And in the palm of the hand, you have all of reality, which you might visualize as a pyramid because it's a hierarchy, right? And as we approach this bizarre thing that has infinite potential, and we listen to the words, it's saying everything that could possibly be said. But time and space hasn't been created yet. And it's infinite, unending speech. And the speech is so great that it's larger than reality. So to record everything that this infinite, absolute potential being is saying, you would need all of the past, all of the present, all of the future, and every parallel timeline, and more. An infinite number of realities would not be enough to write down everything that this being is saying. And in fact, most of it would appear to just be gibberish to us because our own consciousness isn't big enough to hear it. But when we start to try to single out the words and try to make sense of this infinite speech, depending on our own nature, we're going to be able to pick out certain words. And to those that exercise faith, and to those of us that don't have any fear, the words would be good, and the words would be divine, and the words would be angelic. But to those that, when they approach this being, those that give into the fear, the words would be demonic and devilish and horrifying, because there's infinite potential. And so it's really just reflecting back our own nature. And when we ask, when we start to question this being about its own nature, does it love us? Does it hate us? Is it aware of us? Does it not know about us? Did it make us? Did it not make us? Is it trying to kill us? Is it trying to preserve our life? All of those answers are yes, because it has infinite potential. And therein, reality starts to split, because a single reality is not big enough to contain a God that both loves us and a God that hates us, because it either has to be one or the other. It can't be both. And a single reality is not big enough to contain a God that's trying to preserve us alive or a God that's trying to kill us. And so then by the choices we make, determining on whether we have fear or not, that creates the reality that is around us. So this infinite voice, this eye that is watching out of the void, and the hand that's reaching out of the void, and then creating the reality around us, there's going to be a potential in which that being itself is evil, and the beings that it creates is evil. And all of these are realities, are all around us all the time. But because most people give in to the Maya, they give in to the delusion, and they think what they see with their physical senses are real. We perceive a singular world around us, and then we try to make sense of this impossible thing around us with our physical senses. But the reality is that there's just this singular being, the heart of the darkness that is the void. And the reality is that there's no possible way we can perceive all the words that it's speaking. We're too small, and what it's saying is too big. And so we have to choose which words we're going to hear and which words we're going to allow to manifest around us. But the secret is faith or fear. Because if we give into the fear, then the darkness around us will start to manifest. And then the evil beings around us will start to manifest. They're always there. But if we choose faith and we let the light manifest around us, then they just melt away into some parallel reality far, far away from us. So we have a choice, and we should be grateful that we have a choice, because not everyone does. There's a lot of people that are away from keyboard, or they just don't have the level of consciousness necessary to make that choice. But if we're aware of these things, and if we're aware of our own feelings and aware of the thoughts inside our heads, and we're aware of the idea of good and evil, and we're aware of that we can choose where we're going to give our attention to, that's an amazing blessing, to be a co-creator with that infinite being. But evil is always going to exist, but it doesn't have to exist in our reality, because we can just choose to let our light shine. And then those words, they just go someplace else, and they don't have to touch us, and they don't have to touch the things that we care about or the people that we care about. But there is an infinite number of parallel worlds all around us. but we have to choose which one we're going to live in.
Yeah, exactly. Very well said. And choose with determination, with gusto, with conviction, with commitment. You know, it's not just a passive choosing that, oh, we chose a long time ago. Oh, I wrestled with my ego a long time ago and put it in its place. And so therefore I don't have to be humble anymore. You know, it's those kind of, this is how we wander back into the place for potential to leak back in. We start through our complacency, through our unwillingness to continue choosing with conviction. We grow lazy, slothful, and then our actions become portals for evil to creep its way back in.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Eternal vigilance. The same way that we might have a house and the house has to be continually maintained, right? And so we make sure our septic pipes are running away from the house and we make sure everything's nice and tippy top. But if we start to not pay attention and stop doing maintenance on the house, you know, one day you may have a septic line rupture and now you've got a mess in your living room. And before, you know, it could be easy to forget, oh, that's right, we have toilets and toilet lines and wastewater, and all of that has to be maintained. And the electric has to be maintained, and reality has to be maintained. And because if we give in and we forget that, oh yeah, that's right, there's parallel realities in which evil is real, and they want to get into our reality. And so we have to keep our light shining. We have to keep the electric bill paid. We have to keep oil in our lamps, which Christ talked about. Always make sure that we've invested treasure in heaven, that we have oil for our lamp. Otherwise, that lamp will run out, the darkness will creep in, and then we have to start all over.
Very well said. Absolutely agreed. And that's, you know, I guess this kind of segues into another question, but just to sort of wrap up this one, given enough time, the goal is to maintain vigilance everlasting as long as we possibly can. And hopefully we can maintain that for, I mean, but my point in saying that is, given enough time, and since this experience is seemingly infinite, then we'll always come back again and lose our way and fall into complacency and allow evil to come back into the experience and go through the challenge of vanquishing that foe and going through that story again. And that's all purposeful as well, because we do love a good story, which might sound it might sound kind of sick and demented to have this mechanism built into where we always forget who we are. But in order to have the perpetual storytelling machine keep going, which we signed up for and wanted to participate in, which might sound crazy from where we are now, given we're tired of evil and wanting to move away from it, and we will, and hopefully we can stay there for thousands, millions, billions, trillions of years. But given enough time, eventually we'll say, yeah, I've lost the story. I've lost the reason of why I want to keep doing this in this way. And generations will come where they become lazier and lazier. And then all of a sudden somebody kills somebody for the first time in trillions of years. And then that potential just, yeah, it just keeps going from there. So hopefully when those do happen, they're just short hiccups and short falls, and we can pick ourselves back up again. But it does require that constant vigilance, and it requires us to be continuously telling ourselves of this story, reminding ourselves, our children, and everyone to come, of what has happened, and the real danger that does happen if we lose our vigilance. It's not just a simple matter. It's very the potential for harm is great. So I hope that we remember this one well for a long time.
So
But anyway, go ahead.
I'm thinking, so it's been like, 1,000 years, right? And there's never been a murder. And somebody finally gets murdered. I'm pretty sure the people around them are going to take it personal.
Yeah, well, and that could be a catalyst for descending further if one act is followed by retribution of more revenge, and maybe that's the route where we go, where we keep falling. I don't know. So I would argue, even in that moment, we should still remember this one of these four agreements of like, okay, let's figure out what inspired this individual, or who let the psychopath out of their scopes to let them cause harm in that way. Yeah, it is interesting to think about, but a very, very fascinating topic. So I'll just pass it back and see if anybody else wants to jump in, take us any which direction. I do have another offline question that's kind of on the same or similar thread, but I'll see if anybody else wants to jump in first. All right. Well, this one was from Philip Pirvano, and he asked, can you talk about infinity? On one hand, it's impossible for something to be infinite. I mean, how can there not be an end to something? But on the other hand, some things must be infinite because what would come next? I guess it has to do with time and space is an illusion. I kind of get that, but still don't feel it. For me, time and space are still real, although I have experienced things with meditation that prove time and space can be dodged. Yeah, it's a great question, and like I said, kind of aligned with similar line of thinking of, can there be something without a beginning or an end? And that's why the circle is such a powerful shape and such a representation of the void, or that from that which everything comes, which is the nothing and everything. It is all encompassing, and it has no beginning nor end. It is a perpetual loop, and that's just sort of one-dimensionally, and then looking at it from like a toroidal field, that looping in on itself, expanding and contracting all in one motion. So the shape is feeding into itself and expanding out further and condensing further and expanding further, and then minor variations create infinite possibilities through this replicating motion. So that's how infinity exists. It's built upon infinity. The shape itself is infinitely looping into itself with no real beginning and no real end. Now, for our physical minds, this is, one could argue, an impossible concept to fully grasp, to fully be with, because if we could sit with that and truly be with that completely, our character might just dissolve. That might be the thing. It's just like, oh, Darth just poofed, popped away. He went back to the infinite, all-knowing position. It became that again, because we are all that. We just forgot. So in order to truly be with that concept fully, then this version of self would cease to be. So there is a need to have the seemingly finite versions of time and space and these reference points to base our identity off of and tell our stories out of, because if we don't have that, then the story that got Justin Carpenter here and where he's moving to and all of that, it ceases to have any relevance and then just sort of ceases to be entirely. So there's like, how do you convince infinity that it's not infinite? That's the trick. That's the tricky part of how this creation came to be. How do we get ourselves away from this infinite awareness? And, we could talk all day, and I do sometimes talk all day about that, how we fell, quote unquote, fell from grace, fell from that perfection and complete knowing. And it's not that we're imperfect now, we just are at a different level of awareness, so that I can have this individualized experience to learn and grow from, all for the sake of fun and enjoyment, expansion and learning. It's a so just to talk more about infinity, I mean, that would be about all I could do, is just discuss the toroidal field, the figure 8, this looping shape that is feeding into itself, so there is no beginning and no end, and then the cyclical nature of the experience as well, and just looking at the yearly cycle, the seasons that go through, or the moon cycle, the pattern it goes through, the ways that all celestial bodies do their cycles and move through. So these patterns don't have a beginning or an end, they are looping. And so they are representative of infinite cycles. And again, it's hard for us to wrap around there not being a beginning or an end to those. And I can't do any more to explain it, because I don't have that. I am a finite, or seemingly finite, representation of the infinite, and it has to stay that way, or I have to stay that way in order to exist. So yeah, I'll just I don't know if that helps at all with that question, but I hope it gives some perspective, and it is philosophically fun to talk about. I do enjoy stretching in those kind of ways, but that's the end of what I've got there. So I will just pass it back and see if anyone else wants to add on to that or take us in a different direction. All right. Well, another one. This was just asking, let's see, who is this from? This was from Freebird, and she was just asking, can I just explain, or from my perspective, where are we in this movie? So in the movie, she's referring to the sort of grand play that's going on as far as what's happening in the geopolitical reality and the news that's unfolding, and the story that's continuing to go. So from a Q perspective, we are in saving Israel for last. We are in the last stage of the Q transitional phase, which is exciting, because the last phase means we're much closer to the end than the beginning. But as far as how long that last phase goes, I don't know. And I would say nobody really knows how long it's going to go. Even those who are at the highest levels of making decisions, they are still operating based on the divine movement. They're waiting for key indicators to keep moving forward. They have a plan in place. They have an order of operations to employ this transition as strategically and as safely as possible. But that plan does change, and the timeline certainly can change. So that's where we are within the movie, and you can see this reflected, saving Israel for last. You can see this reflected into the general conversation that's happening. More and more discussion around Israel's involvement within Charlie Kirk's alleged assassination, which he wasn't actually killed. He was protected from an actual attempt on his life by those influences. So that's bringing conversation to the forefront. People like Candace Owens and Ian Carroll and others are continuously talking about these kind of things. It's coming up with even people like Tucker Carlson interviewing Nick Fuentes, who has been very open about his perspective around Israel and its influence within this country and then all over the world. And, you know, of course, the media is playing its role that it has previously. Still, it's all white hat controlled, but the media is allowed to, or it's still kind of running on the old programming that the cabal had fed it of, you know, defend Israel, admonish or antagonize or diminish anyone who speaks against them, label them as crazy or anti-Semitic and all of that. So that's still happening, but people are becoming less reactive to that narrative. It's becoming less influential. And that's what they're testing. They're testing to see how much has that grip of this idea that Israel can do no wrong, even though they've done lots of wrong, and arguably all the wrong has stemmed from there. How have people shifted through that? And I've spoken before on what we can see of how that's moving through both ends of the political spectrum. This, you know, the facade that's presented, the left versus the right. On the left, they've lost all interest in protecting Israel, where they used to be quite bold and quick to cancel anybody and label anybody anti-Semitic or racist or whatever if you dared speak against Israel or Jews or anything like that. And I want to clarify, I'm not saying that simple people practicing the Jewish religion or what they believe is the Jewish religion are necessarily wrong or bad, but it's those who parade under that name, who have done many, many wicked things on this earth. That's what I'm talking about. And they're fake Jews. They're fake everything. Every identity that they've ever taken has been stolen, but they use it as a guise to do their wicked deeds, and they have for a long time, really since time began, or this separation experience began. That is the manifestation of evil that has we've allowed to creep into this space. But anyway, going back to the sort of left's dissolution of their blind protection of the state of Israel, that's been dissolved through the Palestine narrative, which has appealed to their, you know, the sort of already baked in conditioning of the woke culture and social justice warriors and all these things, but just using that narrative to soften their constant defense of Israel. And it worked. Now most on the left can't stand Israel, openly speak out against them. And yes, you know, think people have taken it too far with openly hating people who are Jewish, which I am not supporting nor condoning at all. Regular Jewish people have no idea. Most of them, some do, but vast majority have absolutely no idea about these things. So it's not right to have prejudice against anybody for whatever religion they practice. So again, just want to reiterate that. But it has done a great job at dissolving that automatic defense of the state of Israel by the left. So that's working. Not to mention the Epstein narrative and the continued finding out that he might be an operative, and he was to some degree, of Mossad. Now, I don't think he was working openly. I think there's much more of a deeper white hat narrative within all of that. But the overall narrative of what's being brought to the public and how they're responding to things is breaking that tie to Israel. So that's on the left, and then on the right, the same thing's happening, but from different angles. You know, you have the bubblings up of the Charlie Kirk assassination being pulled off by that. You have more evidence coming out of all these politicians who have dual citizenships with Israel, and all these interests of where in Israel, many Christians were very, very much persecuted, haven't been kind to Christians at all. So there's all these things coming to the forefront that are causing those on the right to dissolve that automatic defense and hold. So it's working. It's working. And I mean, you look at this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, nobody was having these kind of conversations about Israel. Now I like to tune into, some of y'all probably know, but one of my favorite comedians is Theo Von. I think he's like, I could talk about my love for him for a long time. I think he's one of the most honest, most beautiful, just pure souls out there. And he's so freaking funny. Might be the funniest man alive, in my opinion. And so I love tuning into his podcasts every now and again. I love watching his, I love listening to him. I love when he comes on to Joe Rogan. I listen to those, and I love his own podcast as well. I don't listen to all of them, but I will tune into the ones that interest me, and it's a great one. And so just hearing him, I don't think he's read into any plan or anything. I think he's a very good soul, and he's obviously being watched by the White Hats for Trump to do an interview with him on his podcast. So I think he's very much being watched by the White Hats. But I think from the same point that I kind of like to watch him, which isn't the only reason, but I like to watch him to see where his head is, to see what sort of narratives he's talking about. And he's been very openly like saying things in very public ways about his distaste for Israel and what they're doing. So I know whatever news sources or things that he's feeding into, which I'm not saying that he buys into like the mainstream narrative, but whatever alternative media he's feeding or he's listening into are giving him that. So it's shifting. So this whole saving Israel for last stage of the operation is well underway. Again, I don't know how long it's going to take to move through that, but Q was very clear that this is the last. So we're in that final phase. So, again, I don't say these things to allude to any particular dates. I think it's unhealthy to play the date game. I've done it plenty, and I've experienced the consequences of playing that game. I don't play that game anymore. We keep living our life based on the best of our ability with what we have available to us, without that affecting our decisions of what might happen or when could it happen. At least that's what I choose to do, and I've been much happier since I've done that. And also to recognize that we are in the final phase of this, which is exciting. It's very exciting. So as far as what happens next, I think that will people will keep being challenged on the Israel narrative. So whatever events are manufactured to keep pushing that, whether that's, as I've talked about before, whether that has something to do with what happens to the Trump character, or what happens to other figures, or what gets discovered about what they've been involved with or what they've been doing, how it ties into the Russia-Ukraine war, if they were responsible for creating bioweapons targeting the Russian people, which that whole thing is largely a facade, but the narrative is real and people's reactions to it are real. And that's what this is about. This is a psychological operation. I still have people come to me and are like, Q's a psyop, why are you still believing that? And I'm like, yes, Q is a psyop. It's a psychological operation, but it's not being done by bad people. It's being done by the most good people to bring us into a state of awareness out of our complete fall, where we were just gobbling up all sorts of bullshit for a long time. And like we've all had Stockholm syndrome, where we were just in love with our captors, refusing to hear anybody that says, hey, you're captive. Refusing to listen to the people that step out of Plato's cave. And we just stay in the cave and keep watching the shadow. So the shadow, those who were controlling the shadow on the wall used to be the cabal, used to be used to be those who wanted to trick us further. That shadow system has been co-opted by the white hats, and they're still projecting shadows on the wall because they've already tried to tell people, hey, you're in a fucking cave, why don't you come out? They've already tried that, and they still will. They'll still keep trying that. They'll be like, hey guys, you're in a cave. And we're like, fuck you. No, I'm not a cave. I'm going to stay here. That's what the cognitive dissonance does to us. So they're like, okay, well, fine. We'll just make the shit projected on the walls of this cave. We'll make it so outrageous, so wild, so crazy that maybe they'll stop paying attention to it. Maybe they'll question it. So it's both ends of that, of the attempts to bring us out of the cave. And Israel was the puppet master to control the projections on the cave wall. That was the puppet master of evil. And that's why it has to be saved for last, because it had the most momentum to protect it on a psychological level and a physical level. The physical level has largely been dealt with. The psychological layer is being worked on. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. I tune into current events periodically. I like watching. For anyone who, I know I've mentioned this before, but if you want just straight up goings on without all the opinions, I really like tuning into the White House YouTube channel and just watching the press briefings. Both Trump and Caroline Leavitt speaking is always informative, doesn't take very long, it doesn't have all the opinion pieces along with it. But I do enjoy tuning into those. And then for just sort of random news, I do like disclose.tv on Telegram. It's very simple, no opinions, just here's what's reported to be happening. And I keep up with it that way. So just a suggestion there if you're looking for some. And yeah, I will pass it back and see if anybody else wants to jump in. All right. Well, let's see here. Yeah, I have a couple in here that will be a bit longer. So I might save those. This one came today from Andrea Hogan, and it says, if the Bible as we know it has been assembled by humans and as it's presented isn't necessarily from God, where does that leave us in terms of its guidance? Yeah, it's a great question. And I will just say first that there's a reason why the Ten Commandments says don't have false idols. Don't put anything between you and God goodness. Don't put any definition, any book, any teaching. Nothing comes between you. No person, no priest, no guru, no guide. Nothing comes between you and God. Because you have within you the perfect compass and of course, we do have to strengthen our discernment. We can be misguided. We can make error. But if we're always humbly asking to receive guidance, then the divine will give it to us. That's why he said in Matthew 7:7, ask and ye shall receive. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened. So if we have this openness, then the divine is going to give us what we need. So as far as the Bible specifically, it has been, it's all been written by man. And that doesn't mean that we throw it all out, and it doesn't mean we take it all as the end all be all. It is it's tricky, right? Because when somebody feels that peace that passes all understanding, when somebody feels that divine connection, when they're aligned, you're in a groove state, you're in a flow, you're in that meditative, creative, you're unlocking, you're seeing things, whether you're astral traveling or receiving ideas or just in bliss and harmony. That's the Christ within you. You are the Christ. You're in your realized state. And these can be very fleeting. They're very hard to maintain. But the more we practice, the more we follow the way, then the more consistent they become, and the more reliable and able for us to, even when we fall out of it, we're able to come back quickly. So the more we practice this and experience the bounty of this way, because the rewards are unlimited, infinite. They're consistently pouring through. You don't have to be trying for anything. They're just, creation will serve you boundlessly, limitlessly when you practice this way. So when we do, we're like, wow, okay, I want to share it. I want to share it. I want to help others. I want to give this gift to others. All my friends and family who I see that are suffering or hurting. And if I see the route, and if I know the simple way, not through what somebody else has told me, but because I've lived it, then of course I'm going to want to share it. I want to teach. I want to share. I want to offer it. But as soon as we do that, as soon as we start to put this process, which is very, very, there are many common attributes to it. And we've talked about it before, and I love Dart's way of describing the city and pointing towards it. But we ultimately can't bring anybody there or get to it. We can point the direction, and we know we're going the right direction because we're receiving all the signs, validating the direction we're going is right. And so we want to help others by drawing maps or guides, and this would be, representative of people who also felt this strong connection and way and wanting to teach and to show. And so they wrote books that were later compiled into the Bible, along with any ancient teaching. These ancient teachings that have been brought down generation after generation, they stick with us because they're effective, they're real, and they have real power to them. But anytime we place them into a definition, a book, we try and contain them, it can be helpful for disseminating that information. It allows the consistency of the word to go through and pass from generation to generation. And it also gives way for evil to distort that definition. And so anytime we create a definition, we're creating the potential for evil. We're creating the potential for deception. And we're getting away from our God-given discernment to know what is right and what is wrong. So the Bible is a beautiful tool to have. It has so much potential for power to unlock. And it's just you discovering the power within you. It can point you to the key that you had all along. It is not the key itself. But there's a lot of misconception within the religious perspective that, it's the word of God and it could never have been tainted, and we've got to adhere to every single word in it, and it's all meant to be taken oftentimes literally and matter-of-factly, and that's that. But then when you ask, okay, so what about these glaring contradictions or practices placed in certain elements that we certainly don't employ today and sound outright violent or wicked to do that, like stoning an adulterer or anything like that. Like, there are some glaring inconsistencies within that book. And so when we have that, this is where our God-given discernment is required, and why definitions can be so tricky, and why someone like Ieshua was constantly admonishing his disciples anytime they would try and frame what he was saying from a religious perspective, or talk about building religions in that way, or looking at churches in admiration, or any of that. Because that's the while maybe innocent at first, but through that, if that train keeps being followed, you have a false idol that's being propped up. And then all of a sudden you have these words that were so pure and so helpful and so simple being put into a book, defined and then twisted, inverted, manipulated. And sometimes not even consciously. It's just the ego, the shadow. It's always vying for power. And so if it sees something that it perceives as a way of getting power, whether it's consciously trying to deceive somebody as a way for power, or if it's just trying to use these definitions as a selfish gain for power, all of that gives power to the false idol and takes us away from our God-given discernment, our knowing of what is right, what is wrong. So to sort of break that further, and I shared this in JC Family, but I'll mention it here too. I really love the way that Aaron Abke breaks it down in his podcast series, the Jesus Way podcast. He does a great job, really does a great job. And I had Aaron on the show this summer, and I reposted it to my newly returned YouTube channel as well. So anyone can watch that. We had a great conversation. But what I wanted to draw attention to were the 5 O's that he discusses. And I am not sure that I will be able to remember them all off the top of my head. I'm going to see if he's got them listed in... no. Okay, here we go. Somebody wrote it in a comment. Thank you, commenter. So he calls it the ontology of God. And an ontology is of or relating to the essence or the nature of being. So it's something that is beyond definition, and even the words themselves could be somewhat confining, but they are consistent with the nature of God. And so he calls this the 5 O's. And you can use these 5 O's to go over any layer of the Bible or any ancient text or what anybody says at any point in time. And if it doesn't align with this, then this is sort of breaking the ontological nature of what God goodness is. So number 1 of the 5 O's is omnipotent. God is omnipotent. Number 2 is omniscient, all aware, all knowing. Number 3, God is omnipresent, permeating everything, all times, all space. Number 4 is omnibenevolent. God is goodness. And I could see the argument in that one of, yes, but God is also in the non-benevolent actions. But even those are simply just a layer of the experience or the story to bring us back to realization of the unconditional love, the highest goodness that permeates everything. And then the fifth one is all one. So all encompassing. There is nothing outside of God. So if you take those 5 O's and you can read through any layer of what's presented in the Bible, and you can find those layers where that doesn't line up with those 5 O's. You know, where there's presentations of Yahweh who is very vengeful and wrathful, and so this is a layer that likely had some form of distortion, whether it was the inversion around who we're reading or why that was presented there. So anyway, this is just a nice little tool to take and glean through the Bible and retain the value, the stuff that does bring us closer to self, bring us closer to creation, and you can see what sort of veers us away. And I love how in their Jesus Way podcast, they always bring it back to the simplification that Ieshua brought to even the 10 Commandments, which is simplifying them down to love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. And really, it's just one, because you are not separate from anything. You are not separate from God. You're not separate from. So if you love all of creation with all of you, knowing that you are all of creation as well as you are you, there is no separation. Then there's no room for harm to exist. There's no room for these any perception of separation to take hold of us, to possess us, and to lead us into any action that causes harm. So that same sort of simplification can be, you can view the efforts or the actions of anything from that, the words of anything, and pick apart what is aligning to that very simple nature of recognition of oneness, and what is moving towards the illusion of separation, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's necessary for us to have a perception of separation in order for this experience to exist at all. And that potential also creates the worst of the depravities to creep in as well. So anyway, I hope that makes sense, and I will just leave that there and pass it over to see if anybody else wants to jump in. All right. Well, yeah, I've got a few more here. So this one was asking about, this one was from Rowan, and I don't remember what the question was, but I wrote a note in here, and it was thoughts on cussing or cursing. So to just go over my perspective on that. And I mean, I don't think it's any secret, because I don't have any reservation of saying cuss words or what people label as that. So just to expand on my perspective within that, I find that people who are very dishonest are typically the ones who have a problem with cussing. I think anytime we artificially limit our language, we're introducing some form of deception, because we're lying to ourselves. If I'm having to censor myself or my language, or if I feel like that's the proper right thing to do, then I'm deceiving myself and I'm deceiving others, because I'm not being honest. So I don't believe in any limitation of language. I don't believe in anyone's offense to take precedent or to stop somebody from speaking anything. Now I know there's conversations around like racially triggered words and very discriminatory things said, and I would still say the same thing. We don't need to let offenses dictate what we do and don't say. Because if people are assholes, if somebody's saying some racially insensitive, derogatory comments towards somebody, I don't think we should stop them from saying it, but we also should be free to say, yeah, that person's kind of an asshole. That person's kind of a jerk for being so derogatory and prejudiced against them. Maybe we shouldn't give them power and influence to really heed what they say, other than just recognizing that they're kind of an asshole. And so same thing applies to anyone who curses somebody, whether you're using quote unquote curse words or just throwing hateful things at somebody or wishing ill upon somebody else. I don't think anything should be done to stop them from saying those things. In fact, I'd encourage it. I'd encourage whomever has feelings like that, please say them, so that we can know where people really are, and not to cast out or judge somebody, but just that it's a faster route of getting to the solution of whatever it is that led to this sort of divide in the first place. So I very much appreciate people who are very open with how they speak, and I think there are, like, my preferences around cussing. Like, I think there are, I think it's such a great way to add emphasis to words or phrases or things that are said. And personally, I think there are some times where it loses its emphasis value if it's overused. If like every fucking word is just fucking, and it's just fucking this and fucking that and fucking all, it eventually just kind of loses the meaning, and it just becomes like another tick or habit. But I would never judge somebody or stop them from saying it. I just would, like, if they ask me, like, yeah, it's not my preference to say it that much, because I prefer to have more conscious intent around the words that I'm using and how I'm using them. But if somebody truly felt like saying it that much, then yeah, I want people to be honest over anything. Honest and true over any other idea that I might have about what should or shouldn't be said. And really, that goes for anything. So yeah, that's kind of my take on cussing. I do think that this was a deliberate insertion in this whole, like, how can we distort the ideas of purity, which are so beautiful and wonderful to acknowledge and to hold dear and to like to be pure of our bodies and what we choose to intake, and be pure of how we hold ourselves and all of that. But there's a huge difference between being pure because I'm choosing to be pure, because I want to grow closer to the purity within myself. And there's a huge difference between that and then forcing somebody else to obey my ideas of purity because of how it makes me feel or not feel. So the sort of inversion came from that higher perspective of reaching purity within, and then twisting it into, now I'm going to be judgmental and force everyone to be within my ideas of purity, the puritanical, movement, which is where a lot of our issues with sexuality and this repression and then binging cycles that people go off of with, the hush hush, you don't talk about it, but then here's all this pornography and prostitution and all these things behind the scenes, or not even really behind the scenes, but it's the two unhealthy extremes, all from this idea of purity. Like, oh no, we don't talk about those things because they're dirty. Or cussing, like we don't say those things because they're filthy, and so therefore, you put on the nice fakeness instead of just being true. So I think that whole mentality is really, it's what tricked good-natured people into pushing these narratives that had a very, very harmful effect on us, where we're stifling our true nature and being dishonest with each other, and then just paving more way for evil to creep in and act more harm. So yeah, that's my thoughts on cussing and how we got there with that. And so yeah, I'll just pass it back and see if anybody else wants to jump in. Hey Jeff, go ahead, brother.
How's my connection?
Yeah, sounds good.
Good. Do you think there'll ever be a point where we will all ever, believe in a same truth, something we can live through, maybe, so we can all agree, or believe in, something that we can all agree on, or moving forward, like, are we just gonna? There's gonna be more division, and everybody will just break off into little communities, and we all sort of like try and coexist, and they believe something, we believe something, or is there going to be something that, will humanity ever all believe in the same thing? Or, yeah, because at the moment, it's really hard to see how that will happen. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say we already do believe in the same thing in some respects. And, it's these things that are, as we've talked about, kind of beyond definition. But the more, at least in my experience, the more that I've interacted with people of all walks of life and all backgrounds and all spaces, like everyone, maybe aside from the very tiny portion of, psychopaths that might not ever really want this, but most people tend to have a similar idea around what love is. Especially unconditional, not the bastardized version that we've been fed or programmed to believe is the only, but like true, caring, unconditional love. I think that belief is fairly consistent. And what is good, I think, is fairly consistent. Most people, that's why, like, in recent talks, I've talked about the jury and the grand jury being restored, and the reason why the grand jury was the highest authority in the judicial system was because people are naturally good. So you don't need the judge to make the final decision. You need a jury of your peers that are intimately connected with that community that incident happened, whatever is being decided upon. And through the collective goodness that permeates all of those people, as long as they're enough, then it helps to balance out any anomalies, any potential for psychopaths to get into that kind of thing. And you have the good decision come forward. But all these things are like, they're hard to put in, impossible to put into a box, impossible to define fully. So as far as will we all agree on our attempts to define these things? No, probably never. Because if we're attempting to agree on a definition, then we're already straying away from that which it is, which is beyond definition. So I think the more that we realize and become wiser and more mature, I think more people will realize that and stick with the fundamental beyond definition way. But will that ever be everyone 100% all across the earth? No. There's always going to be somebody who's not happy, or somebody who has a different perspective or wants to try a different way, or is tired of how it's been, and so yeah, I do see a sort of regionally independent evolution all across the earth. But there will be some consistency, and what I've been told is like, get used to the fact that the military will have a earth-wide presence for possibly ever, as long as the Christic system is being maintained and conducted. The Christic army will be there to confront any real evil that creeps in, any human trafficking chains that are created, wide-scale harm, people taking advantage of each other in a very drastic way, will always be confronted by this Christic army, this Christic military that will stay as long as we can maintain the righteous way as a whole. So you'll have independently developing regions that might have different ideas around what we do in specific instances and how we carry ourselves, and just these conversations around levels of purity. There'll probably be some that are like, no, we don't cuss at all in this region, or no, we don't eat meat in this region, and some regions where they do, and different ideas around how to meditate and pray, and and I think the regions where the definitions are less rigid, and it's more just about the individual sovereignty and individual connection with that divine goodness, and just making kindness king, then those ones will thrive. And you'll naturally move away from any practices that aren't aligned with that. Any anti-Christic practices like eating meat or things like that will naturally move away from. But it can't be forced. Because if you try and force anything, then that, just like trying to force a teenager to do something, you're going to drive them away. They'll drive further into whatever harmful pattern, or whatever friends you told them not to hang out with, or whatever they're not supposed to do. It has the potential to drive them into it. So to give everyone free will to go through the processes they need to, knowing that naturally within the system of creation, if people are participating in anti-Christic practices like eating meat or whatever the case may be, death is the reward. And not to be grim or mean or dark or any of these things. I'm not trying to say that, people are, but it's naturally what happens. If somebody chooses to, knowing that heroin is damaging their body, and they choose to continue doing it, despite all the efforts, despite everyone around them saying like, hey, that shit's going to kill you. If they keep doing it, they're going to die. So this same simple way applies to everything. If people keep practicing things that are not on the path of life, then they will die. And so just naturally, after however many generations of us evolving at different rates in different spaces and different regions, the regions that get it, that aren't creating religions and definitions and forcing people to do things, but they're also not treating this openness, because that's like kind of like the new agey kind of movement, shifted away from religion, but moved into this sort of like, it's all about hedonism. It's all about pleasure. I'm free to practice debauchery and whatever else. Sure, yeah, you're free to do that, but we're not free from consequence. Consequence still exists. So to give everyone the freedom to exist and to be and to learn and to grow, and where the general consensus, which is taught through the family having the strongest foundation as the baseline where all people grow from, and from the family they learn these patterns, not to force them into things, but just to help to expedite the learning process, so I can learn, okay, if I go down this way through these things, it might be fun for a time, but that's hedonism, and it will catch up to me. I will die. And since we'll be learning more that the life and death cycle is no end, and the longer that we live, the more that we'll retain every time, because that's intentionally why our cycles were brought to such a short way, because we lose so much. We don't retain anything when we die. But the longer we live, if we die in that process, we're actually able to retain that into our next incarnation to some degree. So just naturally, we'll learn. And we'll phase out any of these habits and patterns that have been so self-destructive. And if people want to insist on doing them, fine, go for it. As long as you're not harming anybody else, as long as you're not bringing anybody else into it without their knowing, then people should be free to do that, practice whatever. I'm sure there'll be many hedonistic cities, Babylons, that will emerge, and there'll be all sorts of temptations of the flesh that people can participate in, but the ones who gravitate towards that, they won't live very long. And again, not to be dark or dismal, but it's just like that will naturally phase out any of these things that aren't leading us there. So you ask, will we ever get to the point of believing in one thing? I mean, the way does naturally refine us. And given enough lifetimes and enough influence of the Christic way, then yeah, more and more people are going to discover it and walk it. But the Christic way is sort of beyond, it has no end point. So what might seem, like a daunting task, like right now, of like, say, giving up eating meat, in the future, it's going to be, are you able to free yourself from thought so that you can levitate? I'm just giving an example of something that we don't really have as far as like in our wheelhouse of choices to have, but eventually the simple choices that we've made, which seems challenging now, will be a thing of the past, and we're like, oh yeah, wow, I don't even remember that being a challenge at all. It's just so second nature. And we'll be looking to other things, and there'll be always a sort of breakaway group that's practicing the way more diligently, and it's showing where we're like unlocking like what we consider nowadays supernatural, but we'll be unlocking these supernatural powers. And some people will attempt to recreate those technologically, and we'll play around with the technology as well. But technology can also be a limiter. If we rely too much on technology, then we sort of inhibit our natural ability to do these things. And so given enough iterations, enough time, enough lifetimes, or enough years, if we're just continually living, then we'll refine that as well. So yeah, I don't have I can't answer that fully, because yes, in some ways we will, and no, in some ways we won't, and it will be a constantly evolving process. But I hope that gives some, I hope that perspective helps. So I'll just offer that and pass it back.
Yeah, no, you brought up some great points. So I'll have to listen back again, but really appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for the great question. And yeah, I think we're running up, getting close to 3 hours, which I like to keep these at. So I think we'll start wrapping up for today. It's been a fantastic discussion, and I just want to thank everybody for being here. So while we do have some time, I just want to go over the lyrics of the songs that we're going to play us out with. And they're both kind of contrasting each other. They give us both ends of the spectrum. Michael sang about a lot of things, and we could probably spend, I mean, you could spend a long time going over all his songs. So I just picked 4 for today. Maybe we'll do some more. So the first song that I'm going to play us out with is They Don't Care About Us. So this is about the lack of care within this anti-Christic society that has been created and we've found ourselves thrust into. So skinhead, deadhead, everybody gone bad, situation, aggravation, everybody allegation. So everybody's blaming everybody else, everybody in this separated state. In the suite, on the news, everybody dog food, bang bang, shot dead, everybody's gone mad. So really just being very honest about the deprivation of society and what we've fallen into, the Babylonian ways we discover ourselves in. We got to see it in order to change it. So this is just reflecting on that. All I want to say is that they don't really care about us. So those who had been pulling the levers of power, they don't really care about us. You know, it's this realizing that. So continuing, beat me, hate me, you can never break me, that's the Christ. Will me, thrill me, you can never kill me. Jew me, sue me, interesting. Everybody do me, kick me, kike me, don't you black or white me. So bringing in the not so subtle, but somewhat subtle allusions to the power that were and who was controlling the levers of evil, pushing the society into a more and more fallen state. All I want to say is that they don't really care about us, because they don't. I mean, they care not from like care and compassion. They care to create slaves so that we manufacture more children for them to harvest. That's what they care about. Not about us, but they care about, feeding off of the parasite. The parasite needs the host to live. So in some ways, the parasite wants the host to live, but only as a source to feed off of. A very inverted parasitic reality, which is the left brain ego. Tell me what has become of my life. I have a wife and 2 children who love me. I am the victim of police brutality. No, I'm tired of being the victim of hate. You're raping me of my pride. Oh, for God's sake, I look to heaven to fulfill its prophecy. Set me free. So this is Christic beings, the Christ within, tired of this nonsense and ready for the change, ready for the shift. The evolutionary cycle going from night back to day. It has certainly been a long and dark night. So then it repeats there. Black man, black male, throw the brother in jail. Tell me what has become of my rights. Am I invisible because you ignore me? Your proclamation promised me free liberty. No, I'm tired of being the victim of shame. They're throwing me in a class with a bad name. So it draws the attention to the school, indoctrination. I can't believe this is the land from which I came. You know, I really do hate to say it. The government don't want to see. But if Roosevelt was living, he wouldn't let this be. No, no. So then it repeats. Beat me, bash me, you can never trash me. Hit me, kick me, you can never get me. The Christ is resilient. All I want to say is they don't really care about us. Some things in life they just don't want to see, but if Martin Luther was living, he wouldn't let this be. No. Yeah, and then it repeats from there. So that's that song. They don't care about us. To prove. Yeah, sorry about that. Just some connection issues. So this last song, Heal the World, to contrast the other way and show us what we can do, bring us back to hope. We can acknowledge the problems and come back to what we do with that. So think about the generations, and they say we want to make it a better place for our children and our children's children, so that they know it's a better world for them, and think if they can make it a better place. So there's a place in your heart, and I know that it is love, and this place could be much brighter than tomorrow. So tapping into that inner love, that reservoir, that cup that's flowing, spilling over. First, you gotta address your cup. Make sure your cup doesn't have holes in it. Make sure your cup is flipped upright so it can collect the ever-flowing fountain of love. But once it's there, once it's upright, once it's receiving, it never ends. So there's a place in your heart, and I know that it is love, and this place could be much brighter than tomorrow, because it just compounds. It just keeps building on itself. There's no end to it. And if you really try, you find there's no need to cry. In this place, you'll feel there's no hurt or sorrow. There are ways to get there if you care enough for the living. Make a little space, make a better place. So there are ways to get there. Whatever your way is, there's the way, and then there's your way. They're the same, but your way is unique to you of how you connect with the divine. How do you connect with that higher space within? So there are ways to get there if you care enough for the living, because God is the God of the living, not the dead. So heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make it a better place for you and for me. So just a call to that, which this song just embodies Michael Jackson so much. Just the kindness that he gave and lived, and his sacrifice that he gave to us, and still is, I'm sure. I'm still sure he's working quite hard. If you want to know why, there's a love that cannot lie. Love is strong. It only cares for joyful giving. True love, true unconditional love, not the bullshit, false love version, concept thing that's pushed onto us, but the true love. If we try, we shall see. In this bliss we cannot feel fear or dread. We stop existing and start living. So in this bliss we cannot feel fear or dread. We stop existing and start living. We let the dead self die and resurrect and start living. Then it feels that always love's enough for us growing, make a better world to make a better world. Like I said, it compounds. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make it a better place for you and for me. And the dream we were conceived in will reveal a joyful face, and the world we once believed in will shine again in grace. Just beautiful. Then why do we keep strangling life, wound this earth, crucify its soul? Though it's plain to see the world is heavenly, be God's glow. Come back to that. It's so simple. It's not always easy, but it's so simple. We could fly so high, let our spirits never die. In my heart I feel you are all my brothers, all brothers and sisters, all family. Create a world with no fear, together we'll cry happy tears. See the nations turn their swords into plowshares. Where we help each other instead of fight. we could really get there if you cared enough for the living. Make a little space to make a better place. And then it repeats again, and repeats again, and repeats again, just to really emphasize it. So yeah, heal the world, save it for our children, for you and for me. Save it for our children. Such a beautiful commitment and great way to end the show. So I'm going to play these two songs to play us out today. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for being on this wonderful call. And we'll keep on keeping on. I am likely, next week I will be spending time with family on Thursday. So I'm gonna pause next week's show and we'll resume the week after. So I hope everyone has a wonderful week, whatever you're doing and whatever you're spending time with. I'll be sending love to you all, and maybe let this song carry you through whatever you're going through, whether it's challenges with family or being away from family. Just know that you've got a brother here. You've got a brother here who loves you very much, and you've got a brother through Michael who loves you very much. And if he didn't, there's no way he could write the song that we're going to end with. So let that carry you through. And of course, I'll be in touch and available and popping in here and there on the online spaces, but just wanted to let y'all know that. I did post about the watch party tomorrow night. I do anticipate being able to do that. Hopefully the connection will be good enough. Had a bit of connection issues tonight, but I'm hoping we can resolve those for tomorrow's watch party. And we're going to be watching episodes 3 and 4 of It, Welcome to Derry, which was phenomenal. So we'll be keeping up with that series at least for another episode. And come join us if you like. And one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show. So I did a post on last week about the Awaken the Christ Within Summit that I've been asked to help out and sharing. So if anyone is interested in that, I'll repost the link to that probably somewhere within, tonight I'll probably do that. But you can go there, and it's a completely free summit. It's hosted by Aaron Abke and his team, and they're having a ton of great speakers going to be speaking on that. It's a week-long summit, and it's completely free. It's 100% free to attend, to participate in, to be involved with for that week. And then at the end of the week, you have the option of purchasing the material. It's a whole lot of content, a lot of stuff, and I think it's only like $77 to purchase it all, and then you get to have it all. So there's no need to purchase anything. You can watch it all for free. It's just that option if you do. And because I'm helping to promote the show, and they're being very fair with this. I've never done any sort of promos for other summits or anything like this, but they asked, and I felt very aligned with the message and what they're speaking about. They frame it as for all spiritual but non-religious people who are just wanting to deepen their connection with the Christ within. And of course, that's what I love to talk about. So I feel very aligned in sharing that. And as I mentioned, partnering with them for this, for anyone who joins with my referral link and then ends up purchasing, I get 50% of those purchases, and then the other 50% goes to their efforts and all the work they've done in there. So it's a very fair, very, very straightforward, very transparent process. So if that's something that interests you, like I said, I'll share that link again. I shared it last week, and you can sign up, and I will certainly be listening in to the summit and enjoying all the content there. And that starts December 3rd. I think it's December 3rd through 9th, if I'm remembering correctly. So just coming up in a few weeks. So anyway, wanted to mention that too. Thanks for tuning in today. And here we go with some Michael Jackson songs to play us out. So I love you all so very much. Have a wonderful evening, day, wherever you are. And we'll talk soon. Take care.